Welcome, everyone. I, Councilmember Tola Martz, call the Monday, April 6th Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. As a reminder, we continue to have a remote aspect to our meetings. Both staff and members of the public may be participating in tonight's meeting remotely via WebEx. There are multiple public comment opportunities at tonight's meeting. There's a general public comment opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, or you can make comments after the presentation and council question and answer period on tonight's agenda items. Members of the public may address council at this time in person or virtually. Those who signed up in advance to make comments will be called on first. If you are joining us virtually and would like to make comments, please raise your virtual hand. If you are on the phone, press *3. If you have joined by computer or smartphone, look for a hand icon or send the host a chat message. If you're in the room and did not sign up, I will ask for other speakers before closing this portion of the meeting. I will wait for a moment to see if anyone wishes to raise their hand. Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak or indicated a desire to speak this evening?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. As a reminder, written comments can be submitted at any time to citycouncil@issaquah.gov. Next up, we have agenda item COM 0227, Public Safety and Civic Facilities Update. This is going to be Autumn Monahan, our Administrative Services Director.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Autumn Monahan. I'm the Administrative Services Director. I'm here tonight to talk about public safety and civic facilities as an update to Council. So, purpose of tonight is to review our work to date and then to collect your feedback on any information you need and our proposed next steps as administration. So, our proposal has shifted a bit since I was before you last in the fall, which I'll review here the next few slides. But to start out the meeting, at this time, administration is proposing that we do not pursue construction of a new city hall, and that to pay for the remodel of our police station, that we leverage a councilmatic bond and pay for that debt service using some proceeds from the public safety sales tax. We would also temporarily retain this building at City Hall South for police use during our remodel, and use one-time funds to hopefully purchase and renovate an existing building for City Hall use. I went back and looked, and I've been before council to discuss or present on city facilities 18 times since 2023. So I'm not going to bore you too much tonight with too much background. I know we've got some new council members, so I'll go quickly on this slide. We first started our most recent space planning efforts back in 2018. I took on the project in 2023. At that time, we really updated what the needs were for our space, and it very much affirmed that police should stay in its current building, which is what it was built for, but to use the entire building and that it needed a renovation. The council was also very much interested in a phased approach to our space needs. But knowing all of that, we also knew, okay, where will City Hall go? Because we are using the top floor of City Hall. At that point, council asked us to go to the community and get feedback from the community, and the mayor appointed a task force which met 7 times to develop some recommendations. We also sold City Hall Northwest, and then just this year we have moved municipal court out of this building into a leased facility with King County Courthouse. The task force recommendations were to address space needs as soon as possible. So that emerged as a top priority. We heard from many of our task force members who took tours of our police station that said, how can we fix this now? So there was immediate sense of urgency that was our #1 priority, was to remodel that space and give police the space that they need. Next was to relocate City Hall and develop a plan for building a new City Hall on city-owned property. And there were 2 locations that were proposed, City Hall South and a site at Pickering. Next was further study locations for that new City Hall, developing a comprehensive funding strategy, phasing the projects if needed, knowing that this was a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of work. Continued with robust public outreach, and then remained flexible and open to new opportunities as they arise. And quickly, this is our previous building, City Hall Northwest, which we shuttered during COVID and we sold last year for over $9 million. Our project goals that council developed, and that we have been our guiding light since 2023 are to ensure safety, responsibly steward public dollars, provide community accessibility and convenience, support economic development, deliver enhanced community amenities, and embody environmental stewardship. So as part of our work with the task force, we worked with DLR Group, which is a consulting firm that helped us in updating our space needs, supporting the task force and all of its questions, and really starting to shape up what a plan would look like for us. And as a reminder, their estimated timelines for police renovations would be 2.5 to 3.5 years. Building a new city hall would take 3.5 to 4 years, and then relocating city hall would take about a year. The cost estimates from 2025, police renovations range from anywhere from 15 million to 26 million. And we had a couple options we were looking at as far as what could happen for renovations at police. We need a bit more assessment on a final design for that, so that's why the range is quite large. Building at City Hall South on this site would be anywhere from 44 to 53 million, and then City Hall at Pickering anywhere from 48 to 57 million dollars. I put this slide in here just as a reminder. There have been questions in the past about just what lease costs look like, just as an option. So updated these after talking to our broker recently. Right now, if we want to move administration out, that's about 14,000 square feet. That's top floor of City Hall, the Eagle Room, the City Hall South top floor upstairs, and council chambers. Current lease costs are anywhere from $40 to $50 per square foot. So we're looking at, if we were to lease City Hall space, for the interim, anywhere from $560,000 to $700,000 a year. And that is, that's based on availability of like what is actually out there to lease. And so this is just back of the napkin numbers for you to better understand lease costs. So as you'll hear later tonight, there is a potential for a parks bond renewal going to Issaquah voters this year. Knowing construction of a new city hall, and you saw the cost of those numbers, would likely require voter approval. Administration is not recommending that approach at this time. So instead, we are recommending that we do not pursue building a new city hall. Again, with police knowing that is our main priority, working toward that remodel by leveraging a councilmatic bond, and then we can pay for that debt service with the public safety sales tax proceeds. Again, using this building for just overflow as we're working on that PD remodel. We know that that's gonna be a complex puzzle on remodeling while police are still operating out of that building, so I think we'll need some overflow space. And then using one-time funds to purchase and renovate an existing building for City Hall use. And just as a side note, we have been looking for properties in Issaquah for many, many years. Very limited as far as what's available, what even exists in Issaquah. But know that we are still pursuing that and looking for any opportunity, knowing though that when that opportunity does come about, we have to be really ready to go because the market is fast. So know that we are still looking at those options. So as a next step, DLR did some initial work with our police department. We understand how much space they need. We know that they can fit in that building over at 130 East Sunset Way. The next step now is to really refine some of that design work. So finalizing a proposed building layout, having really identified the intent of our design, thinking through the construction phasing, as I mentioned, having a really nailed down project schedule, and then we'll have much clearer costs than that wide range that I just provided you. So we are looking to re-engage with DLR Group and do that next phase of work. And so we are just finalizing that contract now. That will also include other things we need to consider. Our IT relocation of a lot of our, kind of our hub IT, generator replacement, which is very much needed in that building, seismic upgrades. So there is a whole lot that we'll be identifying and looking at as far as this project to really have a better idea of the scope. And so that is really the next phase of proceeding with the PD design work. As for potential funding sources for administration's recommendation, if we are successful in finding a building to renovate, purchase and renovate, we have proceeds from City Hall Northwest, which I mentioned, as well as the food bank proceeds. We also have $3.1 million from the Lakeside Development Agreement that has been kept aside for facility use. government mitigation fees, and then interest earnings that could be used for City Hall. All of these are one-time revenues, and so that is important to mention. A lot of these have been set aside with the intent they would be used for future facility needs. And then, as I mentioned, the idea for police renovations would be that we could leverage some of that public safety sales tax. So in talking with our finance director, she estimated, a debt service about $1.5 million would be a 20-year councilmatic bond at 3.75% interest. That would get us about $21 million. Like I said, we need to do further scoping and really refine that design work for the PD building for us to come back to you and say, here's what the actual cost is going to be. And so this is just giving you an idea of kind of the middle of the road of what that would look like. And so that's what we're shaping up towards, but again, we'll need to refine some design first.
Councilmember Nichols?
How many square feet are involved in that police station renovation?
Oh, gosh, it is, I'm thinking of also with jail, so I'm trying to remember. I think it's, I can get back to you on that number.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Or I have Jeannie on the line. She may be able to answer that here in a moment. Look it up for us.
I mean, there's otherwise referenced 14,000 square feet for the current City Hall administration space, so,
Yeah, that includes some of the space in this building as well that we've been using.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll actually ask a question while we're waiting. Can you remind me, Lakeside was originally 10 million. What did we do with the other 6.8?
I don't recall it was 10 million. Do you
I
recall?
thought it was 10.
I can get back to you on that as well, as far as the list. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I can follow up with you.
For a later
Sure.
date. I'm just
Sure.
curious. I'm sure we invested it in something serious. I just don't remember what we did with the rest of it.
It's been a long time, but yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Adair.
Again, while we're here, there's a few questions along the way, but what this one, since this slide is up, for the public safety sales tax, the 1.5 million a year, how much of the revenues of sales tax revenue, is that just saying we'd take 1.5 million of this, or is the entirety of the sales tax that's coming in 1.5 million?
No, that would just be a portion of the sales tax
Do
proceeds.
we know how much the total is looking like? I know it's new, but
Yeah, the total was,
2.1? Okay,
I believe it was 2.1.
2.1. Okay, so then we'd have another 600,000 a year towards public safety, should we go proceed with that. Got it.
Councilmember Adair, this is Deputy City Administrator Andrea Lenner. I believe the original estimate was 2.2 million annually. That said, there have been changes at the state legislature, which may change that number as more things become exempt. And so I know we're just trying to do estimates right now, but we're really going to have to see how those numbers adjust once we feel the impacts of those changes to the sales tax, which will not be for a few years, but still something that will cause us to adjust our estimates.
Yeah, the numbers of what that change looks like for Issaquah specifically is something that I'm hoping to see at some point, yeah.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I just looked up a previous time, one of the 17 or whatever times you were here, that showed Issaquah police square footage currently is 13,683, which includes dispatch and jail administration.
And in total, both floors are about 28,000 square feet. I did phone a friend.
Great.
I apologize. I forget the square footage based off of if it's the jail or not, so, yeah.
Deputy Council President Chang.
So to confirm, the $21 million in renovation costs is for both the existing police area as well as the upstairs? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols.
So I know you said you'll come back to us with more detail on that, but how many options have we looked at as far as this looks like a very high square footage, dollar per square footage cost from a tenant improvement perspective. have we looked at lowering that, and what are some trade-offs that might be there so that we don't have to use quite this much money?
Sure, and part of this project is renovation for police use, and part of it is a midlife renovation for this building. And so there is other work just to, I mean, this is an older building that does need some midlife renovations as well. But we will be looking at ways that we can reduce costs, knowing that that target of about 21 million, I think is an important exercise to go back now and say, okay, what is it that this project can include? And so that will be a big part of this work as far as design. Our first step was just what would police want, right, in a perfect world? And, we've come through with a couple options, but I think now is really the time to refine that. And like I mentioned, some of this too is not just remodel for PD, but it's replacing a generator that the building needs, or seismic upgrades that need to happen as we have an older building now. But yes, we will be looking at how to reduce costs.
Councilmember Adair.
I can just add to that, since I was on that task force, is that question was brought up, and some of the answers that were given to us at that time was about police-specific renovations are a higher cost than a standard renovation, due to a lot of the requests that are part of this are also a lot of their own safety and security type upgrades and changes that they needed. So that some of the police-specific costs to this would increase their square footage rate versus just like the city hall square footage rate.
So as far as a timeline, our property search remains ongoing for City Hall space. We would then proceed with our building renovation concept report with DLR in Q2 and 3, return the council with a more refined remodel plan with more refined costs and details on how to pay for that, and then begin the police design remodel in 2027 and start with further design and permitting. And with that, I'm looking just for your direction on any other information you need as we work through next steps and your feedback on administration's proposal.
And of course, we're going to split that into first Q&A and then have a separate deliberation. I think Councilmember Adair.
A couple of just the specific questions had along going on. You brought up that interest earnings was one time, and so why is that one time when theoretically it's ongoing, or is that counting multiple years of interest? How is that being?
I'll ask our finance director to get back to you on that. She had identified this as a one-time opportunity we could use toward facilities, but I don't know about ongoing what the recommendation would be for that. But
okay.
Yes, I can have her follow up.
Okay. Another just small question I'm just curious about. So if police ends up using this space as overflow, so council chambers would also would move during that process? Or?
I think a lot of that depends on what we find for space for City Hall, and if there is room for council chambers or not, or we can think through other options too. But that will be a part of us better understanding in this next design phase, how much space we may need that would use this building or others. Yeah.
Other questions before we move to deliberation? Deputy Council President.
Out of that 21 million for remodeling the police station, do you have a rough breakdown of, what portion of it is for the police renovation versus, just like regular building rehab type things?
I can get back to you on that. I don't think it's that clear of a breakdown. A lot of it was very much estimates by square footage, but I can look into that and get back to you.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you. Autumn, thanks for all your hard work on this. I had a little bit more of a future-looking question for you. When the Highlands were built, we built the police station with the understanding that when the Highlands was fully built out, we would need to expand our police to that full level, and now we're there 25 years later, 20 years later. Looking at our future growth, will this police station sustain us for a while, or will we need to look for another one? And if so, what kind of timetable are we looking at for a future facility?
The DLR group and their assessment, we're looking out 20 years, and this building will take care of police's needs for that amount of time. So we are good.
That's great that we are good. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Other questions? All right, well then, before we move into deliberation on this, I mentioned at the top of the meeting that we were going to have 2 opportunities for the public to speak to us. This is the second opportunity, so if you have been holding your opinion, waiting to talk specifically about this subject, now would be the time to indicate to the clerk's office or to the meeting host that you are interested. Again, that would be pressing *3 if you were on the phone, or looking for the hand icon to send the host, or sending the host a chat message. And I will ask the clerk's office if we have anyone indicating they wish to address us.
Not at this time, Chair.
All right. Deliberation on this? Can you remind me the additional feedback that you were looking for?
Yeah, we're looking for feedback on administration's proposal for next steps on
Will you put
proceeding.
the elements of the
Sure.
proposal back up, please? Great. So, cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. Autumn, I appreciate you continuing to bring this up to us as we have gone through the phases of deciding whether or not City Hall Northwest was good to keep or sell, and as we're going through the process here. I would assert that I'm still on the path that we need a new City Hall, and that I do not like the idea of leasing long-term. And so the hope is that we can find a way so that we don't have to accomplish that, understanding that if we have to lease during a renovation or something, that is understandable. I like the fact that we have funding out there. I am hesitant to think that that will cover all of our costs, including renovations and anything needed during the adjustment. So I think we should just keep that in our minds as we are looking through all of this. Kind of your timeline of Q2, Q3, building renovation concept report, and Q4, return to the city council with a remodel plan. I appreciate that we are seeing what that looks like ahead. I would ask that the remodel plan come to us with several options, not just, here's what it all looks like, because then it becomes much more difficult for us to figure out, how could we adjust based on, rising costs or availability to do this. So I would look hopefully for a kind of minimal viable product would be enable the police use of the top floor. A medium would be upgrade everything for police use so that they can use that building very well for the next 20 years. And then a high would be including the midlife building renovations, including seismic. Because I think we need to evaluate this on multiple different aspects. I agree that we need to have the building moved over, but I also know that we are really good at, stretching our shoestrings and all of those things, and I would not want to evaluate this just on a top-of-the-line plan. So that's what I would hope going through as we are kind of looking at this. I also want to assert that at this point, I appreciate the potential funding options and kind of the idea out here. I want to make sure we recognize that is still a budgetary decision. So just because this has been presented as a potential and as good, useful information for us in evaluating whether that's possible with funding sources, there still may be other priorities that we have as council for that money. And so I just want to make sure, especially for newer council members, that they understand this is not us signing off on something. This is a potential idea that is out there, and we will still have that ultimate discussion during budget season. So, thank you.
Councilmember Adair.
Yes, I want to also echo thank you for such hard work on this and the options that have come before us. You know, as a member of that task force, there was a sense of like, wow, this is a real problem, and no idea how to actually achieve it due to the, you know, the issues of the cost to build in City Hall and to try to pay for that. And I agree with the decisions of trying to, you know, purchase a building instead of building a new one, even though I, you know, personally have my heart set on the idea of a City Hall in downtown. I understand that is not likely the, you know, the final option. But appreciate all the hard work that's gone into it, and that there does seem to be a viable path here to address these needs as dictated in the priority list. So yeah, I want to echo, I agree with these proposals in terms of the next steps, but also echo Councilmember Walsh's points about how we decide the money of this, in that, you know, I've also come to council now and have real concern about the budget in terms of this era where we're kind of on our own, and making sure that we hold money appropriately but spend money appropriately at the same time. And this is obviously an important need, but, you know, to like the earlier questions of like, is interest really only one time? Are we going to use up all of our public safety tax on this when, yes, this is important, but there could be other uses? So I equally want us to be clear, like, the options of what to spend as well as the options of the money that's coming in, really clear ideas of this is the money we have or don't have and what we will lose out when we spend it on this. So just make sure that those are very clear as it comes forward. So thank you.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Council President. Generally, I am in favor of the way this plan is coming together. Thank you for all that hard work. I think the focus that we have in the sense of moving the police over, concentrating on making sure that they have the specialized equipment that they need, they have the proper facilities to preserve the chain of evidence for evidence that they're getting from different crimes. They have the proper facilities to detain people in a humane way, and also detain our youth in a humane way should that become necessary. Those are special facilities and special rooms that are needed, so I appreciate that we're giving thought to moving everything over to a more permanent facility right now, investing in it using the dollars that we're talking about so that we can have a long-term facility that, as you pointed out, will last for 20 years going into the future. For the administration, accounting, and the other departments, we saw during COVID that it's a little bit easier for them to work from anywhere if they have to. Having a nice desk and a nice view out the window with the computers is a great thing, but we're a little bit more flexible in what we can do with those departments. So making the investments in the police, that's going to be specialized equipment, I think is the right focus. Keeping the administration flexible in the future as we go and look for other places, I think is the right way to go as well. So I do support this plan going forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols.
Once again, echoing all the thanks for the hard work here. I appreciate these 17 other times that you have presented these types of data. I will say, first off, on as far as the City Hall space goes, I am in general agreement that we have needs there, and I support pursuing approaches that would meet a goal of fixing the problems we have. I also, to your question, I agree that we should not pursue construction of a new City Hall at this time, and we should look for other parcels. I am not myself concerned with leasing long-term. I think it just depends on what the numbers look like. I wouldn't rule something out because of that, because I know how difficult it could be to find the perfect option, and if that was a trade-off that was necessary, that would not concern me versus other things we might have to weigh against that. Also, towards temporarily retaining the City Hall South for police use during remodel, that seems very reasonable. On the police station itself, I agree with Councilmember Walsh on the desire to have some options. I would really like to see this bookended. Basically, like, what does this look like if they get every single thing they want? And what does it look like if they get the absolute bare minimum that is necessary for things like having places, outside to better deal with people as they're going through the system, et cetera. Like, what are the list of the bare minimum things they need, and then what is the high end, and then hopefully something in the middle. I'd also really like to see what other uses this money could be spent on entirely, especially the public safety sales tax. That has a very broad set of things, by my superficial understanding of that law, that we could be spending that on, including things like fire. And we have ballooning fire costs that we have not succeeded in getting under control yet. If the money has to come from somewhere. It's ultimately coming from the public. I think we should make those trade-offs here as well, and not think of this solely as necessarily for the police. Finally, when we are looking at remodeling, I'd really like to see whatever options we're presented with, both on the bookends of low cost, high cost, and in the middle, as well as other options that we could look at in the context of the rest of the budget season. I'd like to really understand what the square footage cost is of this type of remodel, because the rough order of magnitude number there looked extremely high to me, having been involved in very complex build outs in the Seattle area in the past 3 years. I appreciate fire or police stations probably have complexities greater than your typical office, but there's lots of other complex things out there that get built in the area that have much lower cost than this, like less than half of the square footage, if that's really 21 million divided by 20,000 square feet. So I would be really skeptical of that number if that's real. So bookends would be good, high-low, as well as a firm justification of the cost per square foot on any tenant improvements that are needed, and comparing also to other, if we can, police remodels in the area, knowing that costs are typically higher here, as well as other high-cost remodels of other high-tech or things like that, facilities that require additional infrastructure that might justify additional costs, so that we can understand whether the design is reasonable compared to other equivalent types of designs in the area.
Deputy Council President Chang.
Yeah, I think this proposal is generally good. I think, wanting to make sure that we're maximizing the use of the money that we already have and not having to go back out to voters for a large bond to build a new city hall at $800 per square foot, given that that's where construction costs are, I think is a very reasonable approach. Speaking of cost per square foot, so if the cost to build a new building is $800 per square foot, if we're mathing the 21 million divided by 28,000, that's $750 per square foot, which is, definitely in the ballpark of building something new. So I definitely want to see, how we're coming up with those costs. And it very much could be that, this is just a back of the napkin calculation, but then once we get the actual design, the cost could be lower. But I would definitely want to understand what that actually looks like, and, what are some of the areas where we don't necessarily need the most gold-plated thing while still giving our police the facilities and resources they need to, do their jobs. Yeah, I think I'm aligned with this approach. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the, final costs are as we move forward in the design process.
So I share Councilmember Walsh's concern about leasing. Leasing is just a trap, right? You get into optimizing for cash flow and it's very attractive, and then all of a sudden it's 20 years later and you spend a ridiculous amount of money that you're without any equity. So I continue to have that as a large concern. One way to think about, you've heard a variety of different ways from the council about wanting to see options. One way is to think about operational versus aspirational, right? And which pieces of this are part of the operational. We have one of the smallest police forces per capita in the United States. If you say there's 1,200 municipalities in the United States, we're like 50 from the bottom or something like that in per capita or officers per capita. So that induces operational constraints on the IPD, and some of the improvements have to do with sort of force multipliers on operational. An example would be, updating the portcullis control system is operational. A new weight room is aspirational, right? Just to pick on that particular topic. It also strikes me that it may well be that a majority of this current council, almost certainly a majority once we have a 7th member, hasn't done the tour, right? And so the people who did the tour, the chief did such a good job of explaining to us the strengths and limitations of that building, a minority of us have done that tour. I would do it again. So just speaking as myself, but I think it would help as when we then get to conversations about what would be in and what would not be in. But I generally support the administration's plan here. Does anybody want to go for a second? Additional thoughts? Have you? Sometimes you say your piece, then you hear somebody else talking, you go, oh yeah, that's that one thing. Anybody else? Additional thoughts? Going once? Going twice? And I will ask the administration if you have the information that you need from us on this measure.
I do. Very helpful feedback. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Monahan. And we will move on to COM 0228, potential park bond renewal with Jeff Watling, our Parks and Community Services Director. Welcome, Director Watling.
Thank you so much, Council President Martz. Good evening, Council. Pardon me as I juggle and begin the share screen here. All right, I think we're good. Thank you again for that. Always fun to do that juggle. Well, thanks. Here tonight, as Council President March mentioned, let's hope I can advance the screen now.
Show tunes.
Okay, we'll do it down below.
Oh, saved from the show
Thank you,
tunes.
Andrea. Tech help. All right, tonight, yes, the purpose, as Council President Martz mentioned, is we have a prior park bond that's expiring at the end of this year, creating this really strategic consideration for the residents of Issaquah. Tonight, the intent, unlike the 18th time of a conversation, this is the first conversation to talk about this opportunity with you and taking a possible park bond renewal back to the residents of Issaquah this November. As a renewal, this would not represent a tax increase, but would rather represent an extension of the current levy rate. In terms of direction requested, needed tonight, what we're seeking as a first conversation is really just overall feedback on this. I broke this into really 4 sections. Would be very interested to get council feedback on the ballot measure itself and this opportunity to consider a renewal at the same levy rate on this expiring park bond. Second, feedback on the approach we're taking of utilizing previously prioritized projects for creating a package of projects for this bond renewal that the bond renewal would fund. Third, based on that approach of utilizing prior community feedback through our park strategic plan and CIP processes, would really appreciate your feedback on an initial list that I've been working on with Mayor and administration of potential projects that I'll share with you tonight in this presentation. And then last, just feedback on additional information you would like as we move forward into a possible decision-making process on this rather shortened or compressed, I won't want to say time-sensitive, but time-compressed opportunity over these coming months. So some background. Bonding is often used. Voter-approved bonds are used to fund capital projects and have been done successfully here in the city of Issaquah, as I'll highlight. A note I want to make on background and on this slide is bonding does differ from operating levies. Put really simply, not as a finance director, but put rather simply, bonds provide funding up front. When you go to a bond, you're seeking a levy of property tax increase, but you're getting the funding up front, and then you're paying that funding makes it available for you to do capital projects. The property tax is then, in essence, paying the debt, and that's often bonds are all over a longer term. So typically a 20-year term for bonding. Unlike operating levies, which provide proceeds and received and spent year over year. So year by year you're spending rather than putting debt on that. And that's often a shorter term. You'll often see operating levies that the county does and others done that are typically a 6-year term. This would be a bond measure that's expiring. And Issaquah has some recent history and success in utilizing bond funding and going to the community for bonds. Both in 2006 and 2013, this community approved park bonds. Both of those were for 20-year terms. It's that 2006 bond that I believe is expiring. Both of those bonds were approved well over 70% voter approval. The 2006 bond funded a mix of park renovations, some trail development, and land acquisition. The 2013 bond helped to fund some needed facility improvements and system improvements at the Julius Bone Pool. Development, partially funded development of the turf fields at Central Park Pad 1. It partially funded Confluence Park Phase 2 completion, the photo of the bridge there, as well as some other neighborhood park improvements. And again, both of those measures passed by a significant margin. Another difference between bonds and levies, I'm sure you're aware, a bond measure requires 60% voter approval, whereas an operating levy requires 50% plus one. Some initial analysis as we look at the revenue side of what would this bond renewal generate. This was work done with support and assistance of Finance Director Kristen Garcia, so thank you for that, Kristen. This same levy rate of 8 cents per 1,000 that's expiring, renewed over a similar 20-year term, would generate just over $17 million in bond revenue. As we look at funding current park needs and priorities, we have an opportunity to leverage then that $17 million with some other revenues. Currently, we have about a $3 million balance in park impact fees. This would be a great opportunity. Park impact fees need to be spent on capital projects that increase capacity. The projects that you'll see and we're considering all increase capacity within our park system. So that $3 million could be leveraged on top of the 17.3. As well, the mix of projects, impactful projects that we're considering in this package and the communities identified as priorities are some great opportunities for grant revenue and other revenues. Conservatively, we're saying we could generate another $3 million. So when all told, we could be looking at a package in the neighborhood of just over $23 million. So as we look at a potential generation of additional revenue from this bond renewal, we need to take a look at how do we want to consider projects and what projects this community sees as important within its park system. This community has identified many capital investment needs and priorities within our parks, trails, and open space system. That feedback has really come from our both the 2018 park plan update, but also our park plan, as well as the 2024 park plan update that was completed. So thankfully, in many ways, in terms of community engagement, we're not starting from scratch in terms of how to prioritize projects. We have the opportunity to really see and understand the community needs and priorities that were identified in that plan that also help to inform our parks 6-year CIP as well. The overall vision of the plan also helps us in this effort. What we see is really an opportunity to look at, as we develop criteria, considering multiple small to medium-sized priorities, all of which singularly make a really big impact, but collectively make even a greater impact to really increase and improve function of our existing park system, as well as improve connectivity of our park system, both of which are very, very high priorities identified from the community. An important thing to note as we consider prioritizing these projects is that these near-term priorities, when you include all the near-term priorities of the park system plan update, as well as recent work we've done with the community on a real creative solution for expanding the Julius Bones Pool. If we were to look at all of those near-term priorities, funding all of those magically would require us about $80 to $100 million of funding. And so just that context reminder, as we look at a great opportunity for this community to invest $23 million into its park system, it's not going to fully fund all those near-term priorities. So there will need to be prioritization of those priorities. Some other really important factors that we think are worth considering is making sure we're hitting a variety of interests, a variety of uses that our community expects and wants within our park system. No one household uses and interacts with the Issaquah Park system the same way. So how are we making sure we're hitting that mix of uses and priorities, and also looking at the geography of our community and considering spreading out those investments within the system. And following are really a list of possible projects to consider. As we went through that vetting and looked at our park system plan priorities, near-term priorities, as well as the park CIP, these are 8 projects that I'll quickly highlight and talk about the project itself, what the impact and benefit would be, and also just highlight quickly who our partners might be in this work. I think all this work, all these projects have a variety of partners that are very, very interested in seeing this work happen. All of these projects too, as we're doing what we can, Robin Spears here, thank you Robin, Park Planning and Development Manager. We're doing all we can to begin doing a little more deeper dive into cost estimating these projects, but even as we do an initial cost estimation, all these projects range in the $2 to $4 million range. So again, a way to provide multiple impactful projects with a package of this size. So first off, the Eck House. We're all familiar. Oh, I did not mean to do that. See if I can move this so I can actually read the screen. That's great. We're all familiar with the Eck House. This is a historical farmhouse that is on the northeast corner of Confluence Park. Has long been sitting there undeveloped, ready to be reinvested in. We really feel like this potential bond would be a great opportunity to fully fund that work to really accomplish multiple goals. One is really celebrate and landmark that building, but landmark it in a way that also activates it publicly and community is able to use it. We've heard time and time again through Old Town, through the Creative District, the need and interest for more community space. This would be some space that could host art exhibits, something the Art Commission and Creative District's very interested in, but also could be a indoor-outdoor pavilion that the community could rent for multiple ways. Through our work, as we were considering ARPA funding for those council members that were here as we were doing that, you may recall this site and this project was considered for ARPA funding. In doing that work, we've already reached out to King County Landmark Commission. They would be a very interested and enthusiastic partner in this work, as would our partners at the Issaquah Historical Museum as well.
Councilmember Adair.
I had a question on this project specifically, in that, like, I'm very interested in, like, community space, because I've heard that a lot of a desire for that. So I'm a little curious, like some clarity on how the community space for this would work. I see like in the design, there's that outdoor pavilion, which seems similar to like the senior center, awning, cover right there. But how would it work interior? Like, it's like the house would just have rooms that you book, or you book the whole house, or what? How would that function as a community space?
So great, what we've talked about conceptually is, and as we talked to the Landmark Commission, the historical significance of this farmhouse is really the exterior, the shell. And so imagine if the interior becomes one big room. So take out the second floor, have one room with big vaulted ceilings. Interestingly, the back of the house is least historical. And so historically preserving the front and two sides, and then the back of the house having some type of roll-up or accordion doors that would create that opportunity for it to be fully indoor in the winter and in the rough season months, but then really welcoming and inviting back out to that back pavilion, which also happens to be right by the playground. So again, a great way to have this building be historical, but really relate to Confluence Park in a pretty significant way.
Okay, and so if it was, so you remove the second floor and it's a big area, about how much, like, what size of gatherings could you have on the interior, if it was like interior only, so to speak?
Great question. I'm glad you didn't ask square footage, because I don't have that on top of mind, but I know as we talked about it, we're talking capacity of 50 to 70, again, depending on the type of meeting that you're having.
Deputy Council President.
So you mentioned landmarking the Eck House. I'm curious, like, what the benefits of landmarking the Eck House are. Is it just, civic pride type thing, or are there other benefits with regards to funding or things like that?
Great question. I think one of the real benefits of landmarking and considering it is access to grant funding.
So does that mean that we could use grant funding to help fund this restoration?
Yes, exactly. As you pursue landmarking, you're eligible for a lot of state and in some cases federal money to do the capital restoration. Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nichols.
Have we looked at grant funding in the context of landmarking this building or not, outside the context of this bond?
Very
this
briefly,
particular.
but I don't have a specific list of grant projects, but that would be certainly an important next step. And as we're doing cost estimating on each of these projects, we're also looking at enlisting each of the grant sources that we may be able to pursue for those. All right, next slide. Next project that could be considered and also on our park strategic plan as well as 6-year CIP is the improvements to the Senator Bill Ramos Memorial Trailhead. We're all familiar with where this trailhead is on the edge of Sunset. Really serves as a gateway into both West Tiger Mountain, as well as many mountain bikers will use it as their starting off point to go into Grand Ridge. So a really important trailhead. Serving both of those portions of the Issaquah Alps. This work would look at creating a more functional surfacing for the parking area, adding restrooms, adding wayfinding and historical signage, and other amenities that you would see for a fully developed, fully built trailhead. Moving on, these next two options and opportunities really leverage strategic acquisitions that we've been so successful on these last 5 years. The first on Cougar Mountain with the purchase of the Bergsma property, now referred to as Harvey Manning Park. We have a 33-acre corridor that really connects the valley floor and Tibbetts Valley Park up into Cougar Mountain and to the regional park and the King County Parks regional system. This potential bond renewal gives us the opportunity to fund actual trail design and development that would also connect not only to Cougar Mountain Regional Park, but provide a connection for the Talus community to come down and have a pedestrian connection to the valley floor.
Councilmember Adair?
When you just say trail development, would the trail actually get built, or would
Yes.
it just be designed? Okay.
Yep. Trail construction.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. King County Parks has been a long partner. They were a partner in this acquisition, if you remember, back in 2019. They remain a partner in looking at trail design. Our partners at Issaquah Alps Trails Club, as well as local tribes, would be very interested in assisting us in this design and construction work. Next, similarly, through two very strategic acquisitions in this case, what we call the Weymouth property, acquired 20 acres, and now just the recently closed Kilkari 3 acquisition of 17 acres creates a 37-acre corridor, again, from the valley floor up into this case, Squaw Mountain and the regional trail system within Squaw Mountain State Park. Again, a terrific opportunity to take and celebrate the acquisitions that we've done and do the trail design and trail construction that would serve as a way to get up into Squaw Mountain. Also, with the width of this corridor, some great opportunities to do some neighborhood trail loops that support the residential communities around that portion of Squaw Mountain. Again, partners are ready and excited to assist the city and help us leverage not only their resources and knowledge, but also grant funds. Next on the list, another strategic opportunity we've heard time and again from the community, and that's renovations and improvements to our athletic fields. As Councilmember Adair knows, as his time on the park board, we've really had to think strategically about how do we solve athletic field needs here in this community. We are not rich as a community in flat, accessible, developable land. And so what that's really allowed us to do, and I think required us to do in the park system plan, is present a plan that looks at leveraging not only our athletic fields and making sure we're maximizing their capacity and looking at things like multi-use synthetic turf, but also how do we partner and leverage with the Issaquah School District? How do we partner also with the state park, which obviously we've been doing to make sure access to those fields is a priority as well. What you see in this opportunity is before us is how do we actually have the opportunity not just to talk about it, and we've certainly been in great conversations with the Issaquah School District. They remain very interested now in this idea of community sports fields on their campuses, but this levy renewal would be an opportunity to fund probably not all 4 of these examples, but what we're looking at is likely 2 of these examples. All 3 of the elementary schools that exist within the city of Issaquah Valley Elementary, Clark Elementary School, both here on the valley floor, and then Grand Ridge Elementary up in the Issaquah Highlands are terrific candidates for creating this partnered project where we would invest funding, make the synthetic turf improvements to the play areas, the field areas on their campus, which would then become a much improved school asset while school is in session for students at recess, but then would become a terrific additional capacity for the community to be able to use on evenings, weekends, the full summer months as well. Another opportunity we've identified within our park plan on our own property is Central Park Pad 2. Similar to Pad 1, the soil conditions on that site are extremely poor. Drainage is extremely poor. We have 2 baseball fields that are very, very underutilized. There's an opportunity, again, much like we did with Pad 1, to create multi-use synthetic turf, which creates year-round use and also multi-sport use, lacrosse, soccer, baseball, softball, cricket, etc.
Deputy Council President.
So on the school thing, how will we ensure that the school district actually provides public access? Because there are already a number of turf fields on school property that do not have public access, including the one in my neighborhood, Cougar Mountain Middle School. And I would love to see us make sure that we get public access to those before spending millions of dollars creating new.
Yeah, that's an
sports fields.
excellent question. And thankfully, our conversations with the district have been multifaceted. And so we are updating the joint use agreement and are very close to finalizing that update to the joint use agreement. In that new draft of the joint use agreement that you all will see and the school board will see is specific language that talks about capital improvement, partnered capital improvements. And it spells out a method with which, as a partnered capital improvement is identified, an addendum is created to that joint use agreement that spells out the specifics. And in this case, what we've laid out as administration is, as the city makes that investment, as a community makes that investment, the city would then be the scheduler of that said field, thus creating a much more what's the right word, assurance that it would be scheduled in a way that community has full access to those fields. So they would function very much like Central Park Pad 1, where it'd be open to the community off hours. Could be scheduled and rented by sports groups, and again, scheduled and managed by the city.
I guess my other question was, is there any progress on getting public access to some of the existing sports fields that currently exist on school district property?
That is another great question, slightly different, but certainly something that we've pursued and shared with the district. There appears to be more of an openness to encourage community to utilize that. I believe there's a way that residents can sign up for access to that field. I can get you that information. It's something that, in that case, since the city didn't make an investment in that, the school district manages those spaces on their own. But I can get you that information from the district.
Yeah, I've signed up and paid the $75 before. But you know, it's not great to have to pay money when it should be anyway.
I don't disagree, but again, that's a school district administered program.
But if we're gonna have a partnership, you know,
Precisely.
we want to have a real partnership that's beneficial for everybody. Can you go back a slide for a second? I don't want to litigate today where we would put these, but I'm gonna do that a little bit anyhow. Isn't Grand Ridge Elementary School like 5 feet from Central Park?
Yeah, ish, little longer, but
I
yes.
mean, I'm hyperbole for effect, but yes.
Right next to it. Yes.
Basically right there,
Yep.
where we already have some turf fields. So, you know, I'll just put that out there, that geographic equity is important as well, and I would love to do all of these. I mean, you know, there are very few things in this city that people seem to universally love, but certainly turf fields is, you know, as close as people get to universal joy in a bottle. Okay, other questions right now before we move on? No. Carry on.
Appreciate that point, Council President. You're right. Geographic equity is something we really need to consider. All right, moving on. These next two slides pertain to opportunities to make investments at Tibbetts Valley Park. As you know, Tibbetts Valley Park has a great history. It's lived a great life and has many, many years to look forward to as a community park, but it needs a new vision. Its neighborhood is about to change. We are in the midst of kicking off some revisioning work at Tibbetts Valley Park. We believe that this potential bond renewal has the opportunity to at least identify two really critical investments that will likely be part of that revision work. One is an expanded community park-sized play area at the park that would provide universal design, an all-inclusive playground, many of these are called, with the quite frankly, the neighborhood growth that's happened since that park was developed in the 80s, much less the future development or future growth that's likely to come through the Central Issaquah plan just north of the park. Expanding play facilities in that park is a really, really great opportunity and a much needed investment. As I mentioned earlier, that revisioning work that we would be engaging with and probably likely completing with the community next year will inform the location of where this play area would be. Similarly, before the pandemic, we had engaged a lot with the community about a possible dog park at off-leash dog area at Tibbetts Valley Park. We feel like this funding is the opportunity to complete that commitment. Again, the revisioning work happening at Tibbetts Valley Park would inform where this off-leash area would go. We're getting a lot of excitement as we're nearing completion of the Rainier Trail off-leash area. If you've been down there recently, you've seen how close that's being done. We're going to celebrate a ribbon cutting here April 20th with all of you. But if you remember, we realized, again, with how land constrained we are as a city, to find one 5 to 10 acre off-leash dog area that would serve our whole community is really, really hard for us to do in our park system. Where we have opportunity and really can be strategic and innovative is look at multiple smaller sized dog parks throughout the community. So as Rainier Trail Dog Park will really serve this side of town, a similar sized off-leash area at Tibbetts Valley Park could really serve that surrounding neighborhood. And then lastly, certainly we've heard through the park plan process with the emergence of pickleball, but also the resurgence, I would say, of tennis. There's been a real resurgence of tennis. There's a lot of interest on ways that we can creatively expand court space within our existing park system. And thankfully, there is an opportunity that we think that this bond investment could fund. And that's utilizing the additional space. If you're familiar with Central Park, the lower fields, what's known as Pad 3, there is a grass area in front of, between the parking lot and the courts that's not utilized really at all, other than having an existing restroom there. There's enough space there to create 4 tennis courts and or 8 pickleball courts or overlays, create a much more defined plaza space with a restroom and some shelter space that would serve both those courts, but also better create a better gateway and plaza into the field area. So this would be another similar, that small to medium-sized investment that can make a really, really huge impact on our existing park system. And there you go. There's an overview of 8 possible projects that could be packaged together. Again, as we're looking at cost estimation, but all in the neighborhood of $2 to $4 million. We feel like that $23-ish million could fund that level of work throughout town. I'll look ahead to some timing and next steps. Or should I pause there for questions?
Yes, please. Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Council President. To steal Council President's thunder, he always talks about cricket. And I just wanted to see if we are meeting the demand of our cricket community. And if we are, that's fantastic. If it's something we still need to work on and should be part of this, I'd also like to talk about that a little bit more too. Thank you.
Yep, you bet. That's a great question and something that we are pursuing as well. Thankfully, our partnership, we embarked with State Parks last year in taking over maintenance and scheduling and revenue collection for the fields there at State Park. We've actually created two cricket pitches. So that has certainly been a huge appreciation from the cricket community. We also have cricket scheduled on Pad 3, the turf fields I just showed you, where a cricket pitch is put between the 2 soccer fields. As we look at whether it's the elementary schools or Central Park Pad 2, we'll need to look at configuration, but we'll definitely keep that in mind and realize that as we look to meet all of our sports needs, cricket is a real priority as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Deputy Council President.
Okay, bear with me, I have a bunch of questions. So you mentioned the total list of near-term priorities is about 80 to 100 million in total costs. Could you give an overview of what projects weren't selected for this package? Because my understanding is the package that's being presented to us is basically, roughly the size of what the bond could be. So I'd love to learn more about what was not presented and kind of what the prioritization criteria were.
Sure. Boy, I'm going to do this by memory a little bit, but yeah, those near-term projects also include some pretty significant projects. Tibbetts Valley Park, completing the next couple phases of, I'm pointing, but forgive me, our pedestrian park, Memorial Field, Depot Park improvements. Again, a rather large next investment. As I mentioned earlier, renovation of the Julius, or not renovation, expansion of the Julius Bone Pool, part of that as well. Again, all three of those represent multi-million, probably $20+ million investments on their own. So that became that question of, do we consider, if we're considering a bond renewal, do we put a majority of the eggs in one basket, or do we try and geographically spread the interest? There are a number of other smaller level investments that again could be considered. One is the what's known as Anthology, the Anthology neighborhood on Newport. If you're familiar, there's a boardwalk and trail system that we manage and maintain, functions really well. There's two really small grass areas there that we've identified for opportunities for improvements. Those aren't on this potential package list, but certainly could be considered. I'd have to take a look at the actual plan to remember all the other ones as well. But those three big ones really represent a large amount of funding.
Before we move on to the next question, I mean, Confluence Master Plan is like $25 million, isn't it?
Yes, to fully do Confluence. Well, phase 3 of Confluence that also considers moving the maintenance facilities. It's probably, I mean, if you throw in the cost of moving the maintenance facilities, that's probably $80 million on its own. So Confluence is certainly a priority. Wasn't identified as a near-term priority just because of that need to move maintenance. The maintenance facilities would need to be moved before any park improvements could be done.
Great. Yeah, I would love to see the whole list as well as the rationale for including versus not including all the other ones. Okay, next question. So this bond is 20 years. So, I mean, are there going to be other opportunities for additional capital improvements over the next 20 years? And would they, how would the scale of that compare to the size of this bond?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, considering if we go back and look at 2006 and 2013 bonds, this community is still paying off the 2013 bonds. Other capital projects have certainly been considered and done as well with other funding, be it grant funding or others. So, again, not to say I know exactly what it's going to look like, but a bond renewal like this wouldn't preclude other capital conversations or priorities or work being done.
Great, thank you. And last question. So on the pickleball fields, have we considered other locations that we could put pickleball fields?
We've considered a few, yes. I think these strategically probably make the most sense when you look at proximity or lack of proximity of residential houses near it. So we really feel like this is probably the most viable, cost-effective candidate for doing them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, people get upset about the pickleball noise. I will note that there is in a neighboring city in Kirkland, they actually converted one of their old park and rides to have these like pop-up pickleball courts. So I hope that that's something that we could consider as well, especially given that our park and rides are incredibly underutilized.
Cool.
Councilmember Nichols?
Thank you. And as others have said, appreciate that putting together a list like this is hard. I'd like to ask if you could go through a little bit, first of all, what your overall thought, if you had what your overall goals were. I think you alluded to this in the beginning, but if you could be explicit about that. So in part to help us understand what was considered and what wasn't. So that's part one of my question, but I think I can give them to you all at once because I think they'll tie in together. Associated with that, did you look at larger bonds, or were you constrained to this as part of the constraints that you were declared yourself working on under? And also, the list that you have, did you look at, was one of your goals to try to have a large number of things? Or is that, did you look at having, was it possible in the way you were going through your thought process to have a fewer number of bigger things? So they're kind of nested, so I'll give them all together even though it's three separate questions. So what was your mental model when you were putting this together, so we can understand what else, other things might be out there, and what were all the constraints that you either were working under explicitly or implicitly?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do my best. I would say in terms of overall goal, again, knowing that we engaged with this community in a rather robust way in updating the park system plan, it was really leaning heavily on the feedback and priorities we heard from that plan. What we heard from that plan from a vision and goal standpoint is we have a park system that is wonderful and is great, but in some cases is a little tired, in other cases isn't performing or functioning to the level that we want to. A desire to add city park amenities that residents see and utilize in other cities. How can we add those to our existing parks? So again, really playing on that vision of adding amenities and adding performance to what we have in the park system. And then another, I think, real central part to the vision, Councilmember Nichols, was we've heard time and again our community wants a connected system. It wants a system that's connected both internally, and it wants a system that is connected to the regional lands around us. And so that idea of connectivity resonated really, really highly with us through the park plan process, and now as we've been, again, pretty quickly pursuing this over the last 3 months, and that's it. Engagement with the park board twice has really reaffirmed, hey, let's utilize that engagement that's been done with the community. And so the guiding principles, again, of improving functionality of our existing parks and connectivity, really, really big goal. Another central goal is balance. Was a big theme that came out of the park system plan, and when we mean balance, it's, hey, we're a system and we have residents that really value the importance that our park system plays in open space. And we have other residents who really value and feel like the importance of our park system is developed city parks. And so balance in terms of the vision of the plan, and balance in terms of how do we replicate that sense of balance in a package that we would consider taking to residents, is how are we meeting both passive recreation goals and uses in the system, but how are we also addressing active or developed elements of the park system? So those were sort of macro level considerations as we looked at this. As I said earlier in the presentation, looking at geography and how these investments can be spread through the community was a really, really high priority. To your question about have we considered an expanded bond, we have not. As we've, again, engaged this opportunity with the mayor and with administration, we really feel compelled in this initial presentation and conversation is, how do we see this as a moment to go to the voters and say, hey, we're not asking for any new revenue. We're not asking for any new tax. We're just asking for a renewal of the current levy rate that you have. And here's what let's demonstrate what investments could be made with that same levy rate. So we consider, if we are moving forward with this, if we're putting together the elements of a campaign that, again, is a relatively short timeline. As administration and as park staff, we feel a renewal presents a much higher potential of approval than considering an expansion. So not to say that isn't a possibility, but those were criteria that we've considered, again, as we've put this together as a potential package, what a potential package could look like.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. I feel like I have to address the elephant in the room, which I feel like is the pool expansion. Can you talk about why that isn't in this project and how we will address community concerns if we go forward on this, in saying we've either deprioritized it or it's just not one of the areas that we feel like we can fund?
Yeah, great question. I would say it remains a super, super high priority. I guess we're faced with choices and trade-offs. So a pool expansion in and of itself is probably $20+ million. So is this a bond renewal that pretty much solely funds a pool expansion? And is that more supportive? Does that provide more community benefit than a array of investments throughout the park system? Not that one is more important or a higher priority than the other, but I would say as administration, we really feel like a spectrum of improvements done throughout the system that all have a significant impact in the function of the system provides a broader community impact for considering an ask to the residents for renewing this park bond. To the pool expansion as well, as we've talked, and as you recall those conversations when we did the feasibility study, we don't necessarily want to be the only funder of that. And we feel like as a county-built pool 40 years ago, hey, King County, you don't get to just not be part of this solution. So we feel like there is need and opportunity to seek some county funding. We also, again, in our ever-increasing partnership and collaboration with the school district, as they're considering a fourth high school, if that fourth high school has interscholastic sports like the other three, they're going to need to likely have that pool be an asset for that school as well. And so we've asked and would hope that there is some funding coming from that agency as well. When you consider a bond and if we're taking something to the voters in November, we do not have that other funding lined up. And so I don't know that we would be ready to say, hey, we're gonna partially fund the pool and we have to wait and try and get funding from these other two partners. And so not to say it's not a priority, it just has a number of other moving pieces that some of these other projects don't. Does that help? It becomes a trade-offs conversation.
Deputy Council President.
Okay, so tacking onto that pool conversation, so it looks like the King County Parks Levy does have significant funding for, aquatic facilities, and there's specific things in there that are, there's allocations for specific cities. Is that something that we've had conversations with King County about being included in their levy as well?
Yes, so that aquatic funding is twofold. I'm not party to what some cities got dedicated funding and others don't. I can tell you that most of that funding is done through a very competitive grant process. And so that's something we're very aware of. And again, as we feel like we have answers from the school district and maybe when their funding would be available, we've pursued King County. They're aware of our desired pool expansion, and whether we seek funding through the grant process is what we would absolutely do because that's available to us. Sorry, I can't really speak to why some others were identified as direct funders.
That's fair. Thank you.
So I have a question. I'm just, as we've been chatting, I've been taking a look at the capital improvement plan, the parks portion. Do synthetic turf fields sort of swamp everything else, so to speak? Metaphorically, I did not intend that as a pun, but I guess it came out as a pun.
In terms of funding cost?
The funding cost, is it really a different order of magnitude than some of the other items we have here? Because I look at pad 2, and in the plan, that's $9 million.
Yeah, and that's $9 million because do we consider completely moving a restroom and a sewer system? And I mean, there's other elements that aren't just turf.
Okay.
As we evaluate this, and it wouldn't necessarily play with a school site. But to your initial question, I wouldn't say they swamp necessarily, but they are expensive, much more expensive per square foot.
They're a
than
different
other-
class of,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
solution.
They're-
A lot of these are 2 million, 3 million kind of solutions, but they're bigger, right?
Yeah, and again, we will do, each school site, if we're looking at those 3 school sites, provide or have some different site considerations that we need to keep in mind, none of which are as big or as complex as Central Park Pad 2. Again, we'll have an idea, but yes, if we did 2 of them, it's probably in the order of magnitude to complete those 2, $8 to $10 million of the work, yes.
And I just said 10 minutes ago how much people love turf fields, right? So I'm not suggesting it's a bad idea. I'm just pointing out that it's in a different, as you T-shirt these, right, small, medium, and large, there's a bunch of these that are by capital improvement plan standards sort of small. Turf fields are not small. They're at least medium.
They're a decent size investment. They're also great projects for grant funding. You may be familiar when the 2013 bond funded Central Park Pad 1, only about $1 million of the bond funded that $5 million project. That $5 million project was found with some other grant sources and other funding sources. So we, again, feel those projects, especially done in the form of a partnership between 2 public agencies, could really be great candidates for some grant funding.
Deputy Council President?
So is there going to be an opportunity for us to, consider adding additional projects to this list?
Sorry, I had to get a drink of water. It's much better. Your pleasure. Yes, if you want to either add, I think as we get a sense of cost of these, it's probably addition and subtraction. If there's a desire to add something, something else probably needs to be taken off. But absolutely, as we, again, try and really explore this over the next couple of months, those are definitely considerations.
Thank you.
I mean, I will add, I think there would be, we have a list of the touches that we potentially have in front of us, and services, safety, and parks is one of them. I mean, I think I may be hearing from the council a question about whether the requirement of just having it be a replacement versus something else might be a question that we'd want to address before we said exactly what was in it, because what I'm hearing is that there are council members, what I think I'm hearing is that there's some interest in considering something more than just a replacement. And we should think about that before we decided to add or subtract things from an administration recommendation. I guess we're getting into the I just want to point that out to your question about opportunities for touch. There's also opportunities for strategic conversations as well. I'm not, notice I wasn't recommending one or the other. I'm just saying it could be a conversation that we would have. I'm sorry, Deputy Council President.
Okay, another question. So you mentioned there's the 2013 park bonds as well. Do you know when those are going to be expiring? Because potentially that would be another park bond renewal opportunity.
Yes, and again, I can confirm that with finance, and as we work a little closer with the bond council, if they weren't, just 20-year clock, that'd be 2033 that we're likely looking at those expiring. Yep.
Great, thank you.
You got it. Okay. Great questions, really appreciate it. Timing and next steps, we've touched on these a little bit. We've had some prior discussions. The mayor Mullet joined us as staff at the February park board meeting to initiate this idea and begin to get park board feedback. We then followed up at the March meeting. Lots of questions, lots of support. in that discussion, more to be had. Here we are tonight. Community outreach is something that is going to be really, really important. And I think, as I've shared with some of you, given the timing of this potential, bless you, renewal, we're kind of uniquely doing community engagement at the same time we're having really, really important council discussion. And I want to be very intentional about, and obvious, I think it's going to be important to do both of those in parallel. Not that we're trying to get out in front of you, but I think informing and beginning to have conversations with the community is important. We're looking at some creative ideas of doing that. Something we would love to do is take the presentation as we've shared with you tonight, share that with board and commission liaisons, and invite an opportunity for Robin or I or both of us to go to board and commission meetings and begin to get some feedback from those residents, and just find ways to begin to percolate conversation about this idea within the community. Obviously, as we head into spring, summer, as we're doing potentially more, I don't want to jump the gun, but if there's interest from council exploring this further, we would want to be doing community engagement at some of our spring and summer events, while at the same time having these possible conversations and further conversations with all of you. So opportunities both, as Council President mentioned, some upcoming Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meetings, also the City Council retreat on May 9th, if this is perhaps an agenda item at that meeting. We're looking for having a Park Board recommendation to you sometime there late May, early June, ideally working back from a November 3rd election. June, early July, we would really be really an important decision point for council to consider making a decision at that time. It's August 4th that we would need ballot measure information to King County elections to get on to the November election. So just some important dates to keep in mind as we consider what further discussion looks like on this item. And with that, I thank you so much for the questions through the presentation. As the mouse is getting kind of funny on me here. It seriously will not stay in one place. Back to the discussion, the direction needed. These 4 points in terms of the idea, how we prioritize and consider projects, what size package looks like, and just additional information. Appreciate any and all discussion and feedback you can give us tonight. Thanks.
Councilmember Nichols, do you have a question? So this is, if we don't have any other informational questions and are ready to consider deliberation of the direction needed, I will ask again to the public. This is the third and hypothetically final opportunity for public comment this evening on the particulars of this item. So once again, it is press *3 or look for the hand icon, or if anybody in the room, looks like we have someone in the room who's interested in speaking. If you would like to give us your name and your relationship to the city, that would be swell.
Yes, hello. Good evening, council members. My name is Christian Canham. I'm a property owner up in the Squawk neighborhood in 1080 Ridgewood Circle Southwest. Yeah, I like the list put together tonight. I think it has a fair balance between, as you mentioned, like the city parks and the more traditional rural parks. I'm definitely someone who leans more towards the rural parks. I bought the house I have now in Issaquah for the sole purpose, or for the primary reason, but that for the trail system in Issaquah, for Cougar Mountain, for Squawk, and for Tiger. I think that's what makes Issaquah, sets Issaquah apart from the neighboring towns, and what makes it really special, and we should lean into that. I also think we should consider some of the recurring costs that are incurred. Like, for example, if you want a pool, that's not going to be cheap to maintain year after year. I think that's a great idea, but that should be considered as well. Something like a trail would have, I believe, like more minimal recurring costs. So I'd like to see that cost versus benefit breakdown over time and how it factors in recurring costs. I would like to specifically voice my support for 3 of those projects. So the Bill Ramos Trailhead. I drive by that trailhead all the time, and I see oftentimes overflowing with cars spilling out into the neighborhoods, and it's kind of a safety concern. I don't think the proposal was to expand that trailhead at all, but paving it and putting lines down will make it more organized and improve safety. Same with the bathroom. People tend to figure out their own ways to go to the bathroom at trailheads, and it's not always the most sanitary conditions. So I believe a bathroom there would help a lot. Cougar Mountain and the Squawk Mountain corridors, that's kind of my own selfish thing. I'm on the trails every day, running or hiking. More trails, the better. And also, I would like to propose additional project there. There's the Bullet Fireplace trailhead up in the Squawk neighborhood. That, I believe, should be considered for a bathroom as well. I also see, I've seen friends who have gotten their cars broken into in the neighborhood or that trailhead. I think it's sort of neglected. So if we can put cameras kind of up in that trailhead area and also the East Sunset or the Bill Ramos trailhead, I think that would be a huge benefit as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And I will ask the clerk whether we see any indication that anyone online wishes to speak to us at this time?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. All right, so we can move into the deliberation on the 4 points above. I think we can take them as a group. I don't think we have to go through them item by item. I saw Councilmember Nichols flick his camera first.
Technically, it's a
Or mic,
microphone.
Your mic,
but,
I'm sorry, not your camera, your microphone.
It was close. I really only have high-level comments, and that's in part because my comments are really about the way that I think this was constructed that might have limited it coming up with the best possible options. I want to start by saying that I don't really believe in the concept of a bond renewal. If we don't renew it, taxes go down, and that we should be very cognizant of that. Like, this is something that people should be, when they're voting on, are aware of, and we need to be as well. So it's not a renewal. We're asking for more money to do new things. Yes, it's at the same rate that people have been paying, but fundamentally this is a new ask. And I don't think we should, or it's fair to justify it to voters just based on the fact that they got used to paying a certain amount. I think that's important also because I think the voters are primarily voting on how important they feel a thing or a package is. And whether the public really believes in funding that or that concert of activities. I think we saw this very this point was very well made over the course of the school district's recent bond efforts to fund a new high school. I think the fact that the significant decrease in the second effort there and the total cost of that high school having essentially zero impact on the overall outcome of that vote is indicative of the fact that voters they're looking at the value of the specific thing, whether they can get excited about it, whether they're really interested in it. And if we do a good job picking the right things and selling them on it, that it's worth spending their hard-earned tax dollars on, that's what we should be focusing on. I think setting the overall vision first, not being constrained necessarily, overly constrained to the specific dollar value. Now, of course, we have to still be reasonable. Like at the end of the day, we're going to want to propose reasonable bond packages. But having that as an initial constraint, I think might have impacted this in a way that is kind of catastrophic for the overall set of things that come together. Because when I look at this, it looks like we don't really have a vision that we were going towards. It looks like we have a kind of a laundry list, or it looks kind of like a Frankenstein effort in some ways, where we're trying to piece together a variety of independently useful appendages, but without necessarily a master plan, except that it has to fit X dollars. So without that central vision, it's really hard for me to imagine myself showing up at somebody's door and selling this thing. Like, I like all these things individually, but I don't genuinely know what I would say to somebody. if I was trying to convince them to vote for this, at least with those packages as is, without a better central vision that ties it all together. Which is not to say I don't like any of these things. I like that whole list. I love them all. They all sound great. They also maybe sound like kind of smallish things that we could consider doing on a year-to-year basis, or looking for grant funding, as you mentioned, for some of those. So my perspective is that this needs one of a couple things: a central vision that ties these things together in a way that we can broadly understand and believe ourselves, and then communicate to the public, that says what these things are, and why they make sense together as a single package. I don't want to debate that right now. I think that needs a lot of input, and there's a lot of good ideas there. That central vision could be a halo project like a pool. It could be a trail system that really connects all together. There's a bunch of things that I could imagine where you could have a vision, and then part of your approach of getting there is coming up with the right things that meet that vision. But just being constrained at the beginning to a dollar value, and then trying to pick kind of peanut butter around different projects that are all kind of smallish to different areas to fit within that dollar value, feels uncompelling to me in a way that I think the voters may also not buy into. And it also seems like a missed opportunity, in part because some of these projects we really could probably do on a year-to-year basis if we get grant funding for them, et cetera. We can't probably do that with some of the bigger things, or with some of the more visionary things that you could in principle put together as part of a more unified, I would dare I say, visionary package.
Thank you. I believe it was Councilmember Adair was next.
So obviously I want to lead with Jeff. Very much appreciate all your hard work and all the time with this. So for me, and especially coming from the Parks Board, I can say when this was brought to me and I looked through it, I became very excited. You know, I'd worked in there for a while. I'd seen many of these projects and others be listed as these things we want to do one day, and seeing a list of, oh, we can actually do these now made me very excited and happy to see this package. You know, I support this idea a lot because I do think our city takes a great deal of pride in our parks. It's something that anytime I talk about, people love Issaquah parks. And so the idea of a vote, you know, that they need to continue taxes or new taxes, I think would be widely supported in this community, because it's just, I think our parks are a point of pride. And so I do think this. I would encourage the full council to, if you haven't, to read the park plan, which actually lists a lot of these, you know, the short-term ones that are listed here, as well as others that are in there, as well as I do think there is a vision in it. Though I can see your point, Councilmember Nichols, about, you know, how we sell that vision within these, because it is a bunch of disparate ideas. How I've seen it is that I feel it's, as stated, so many people take something different out of the parks. What they think of Issaquah parks is different, and some people think it's the trails, some people think it's the playgrounds, some people, you know, think it's the fields that they get to use. And so by having this where it addresses multiple needs, it's us telling the community, hey, we hear all of you, and we want to improve our parks, add to our parks, and we're trying to answer multiple needs for everybody here. So I feel like there is a vision in this. Maybe there's a better way to clarify it, and maybe that might help. But I fully endorse and like this plan. My kind of notes to it is that one of the big things for me, which was brought up, is, and also in connection to our earlier discussion about City Hall, is that community space has been a big priority, and I've heard it a lot. And I see that we are addressing it a bit with the Eck House. And I looked through the plan to try and see if there were others. That's something I would just want to be considered. If there is other opportunities for community space within some of our other plans, I don't know that there is. I did do a pass on it, and I did not see that, but I do know that that is desired a great deal and demanded a lot. And if there is any other opportunity that may add one more space amongst our projects, would be great. The other thing that would be nice is, because I know you've been so successful at grants and things like that, if there is like a second tier list that's like, if we're able to get grants and actually have money left over of some other little projects that could be done. For example, I know also the other big ask has been the different types of park amenities, you know, more community gardens, archery, other types of activities that we might be able to incorporate that could be maybe cheap, but like where we could fit in another little activity here and there to, again, continue making a very well-rounded and accessible park space for everybody. So those are kind of the two thoughts I've had in this, but overall, I support this a lot and this vision.
Thank you. Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. As I look at this, I mean, my first reaction is, gosh, we really love our parks in Issaquah. We highly value our open space, our sports facilities, our playgrounds, our trails. All of this can be seen by the users of our parks and also by the portion of our budget that we already commit to the park system. All of that being said, I want to take a step back from everything because this does feel like it's coming up because there is a potential for a renewal, and it's not coming up at the same time as our budget season, where we can really highly understand and evaluate all of our potential needs and costs. And so that's part of my concern. Also, when I look at page 37 of our capital improvement plan, I see that of the 53.8 million in parks projects that are allocated for that 6-year period, we already have 46.1 million of identified revenue. That covers 85% of what we have said we were going to do over a 6-year period. Now, that doesn't include all of these projects that are being presented here, but for the 4 projects in this proposal that are in the 6-year CIP, there's only a gap of $4.5 million in needed revenue. And so the rest of that is already proposed to be funded by REIT and park impact fees and grants. So I come back to this. Do we need to pause for something? No? Okay. I come back to this, and on the one hand, I want to celebrate our ability to prioritize and find funding for our parks needs, but also question whether this is truly the place where we need additional revenue and a bond. When I am taking that step back and looking at all of our comprehensive needs in the city, I would say there are many areas where we have a lot of both capital needs and operational needs that we don't have revenue for. So when we're looking at our CIP, our municipal facilities area where we have 6 years of projects, our identified revenue only covers 45%. And so that's an area where I feel like we have bigger gaps and maybe more of a need to go out to voters for coverage. But I'm also really concerned about tax fatigue. We are not the only ones that are going to be going to voters asking for funds. King County certainly has projects out there that they're planning to take to voters. And I think we need to take our consideration. You know, we had a plan for the different revenue sources that we felt like we could go to voters for. And then there are other things that have come up, such as Eastside Fire and Rescue. And so that's going to be potentially a big ask to the community. I also get concerned that doing this smaller $17 million bond may eliminate or postpone our ability to effectively go to the community for a larger park district, which could cover not only capital needs, but also operational needs at potentially a much higher rate. So I want to make sure we are not shooting ourselves in the foot, either for additional revenue needs, such as Eastside Fire and Rescue, but also larger revenue from a park district that could create that kind of comprehensive idea of here are the things that we love about our parks. And then finally, I will say our operational needs. If we are going to go to the voters for anything, I feel like we can make choices to cut back on capital projects where we cannot make as easily make cuts is many of our operational and staffing needs. And so when I'm just coming through all of this, I love these projects, but I also feel like many of these projects are already have identified revenue in our CIP. I know CIP is not a budget. I get all of that, but seems like we already have a plan for many of these. So I'm not connecting the need for a bond with these projects being something that voters would necessarily pass.
Thank you. Deputy Council President Jang.
Great, thank you, Council President. So on the point of REIT, so if you look at in the capital improvement plan, I think last year when we were talking about this, we said for the first time ever, we actually don't have a balanced capital improvement plan for the first 2 years of this one because we don't know with economic uncertainty. And so our projected ending balance in REIT by 2032 is $42 million. So projects that have identified REIT as a potential source, that doesn't actually mean that we're going to have the money to do them from REIT. So I just want to make that clear that just because we think that it's like, oh, what money are we going to use? Well, REIT is a funding source that exists. That is not actually the case. And the amount of revenue we're bringing in from REIT is just nowhere near the amount of projects that we've identified that we think are going to be funded from that. On the point of community space, this is a little bit tangential to this discussion, but I do think we could be doing a better job of advertising some of the community spaces that already exist. For example, did you know that almost every fire station has a meeting room that can be used? It is really easy to book them, which indicates to me that people don't know about it. And so I think that could be something like on the website, oh, are you looking for community space? Here's some places. And and before, I think this kind of goes to my point on, the turf fields. Like before we spend $5 million on a new turf field, can we at least try our best to get public access to the turf field that has already been built and exists? I want to echo Councilmember Walsh's point on the need for operational funding. So Issaquah's park staff are amazing. Last year I actually had the opportunity to volunteer at this elementary school cross-country meet. And when I was there, Issaquah had the biggest team by far. We had like 100-something kids. The next biggest one was 30-something kids. I ran into my friend who lives in Bellevue who sends his kid to the Issaquah program because he says it is just so much better. And so, these are the types of programs that are beneficial to our residents. And I think we really do need to think about, how we continue those. When I was talking with some of the staff there, given where we were at in the last budget cycle, there were some budget cuts. And so there are some things they weren't able to do last year or this year that they were able to do in previous years. I would hate to see that cut more. And so I'd love for us to think about, what's the right balance of operational versus capital funding when we go out to voters. That said, I am generally very excited about the bond, especially the trail projects, given that I'm president of Issaquah Alps Trails Club. I think, we've done a lot of great work on acquisitions, but, we haven't really activated those acquisitions. So this is a really good opportunity for us to do that. I also want to echo Councilmember Dare's point on the additional amenities. I have another friend who basically had to wait 3 years to get a community garden plot because there's only, a couple dozen in the entire city. This doesn't seem like something that would be really expensive, but, especially as we want to build more dense housing and folks aren't going to have backyards, I think this is going to be increasingly an important amenity for folks, who want to move to central Issaquah. So I would encourage the inclusion of that. It's honestly probably like really small compared to putting in a huge turf field. So would encourage that as well. Thank you. One more thing, sorry. So I would also love to see a breakdown of for each project, what's the expected cost and how much grant money we're able to leverage. My understanding is this one, it's like 17 million and we think we're going to be able to leverage about 3 million in grant funding. That seems really low. Our 2013 bond, I found some PDF that says the bond amount to voters was 10 million and the grant amount was 6.3 million. So that's 60% of the bond value that we leverage in grants. So I would love to see our number for this bond be, closer to that instead of like 16% or whatever. But overall, I think I want to thank you for all the hard work on this, but definitely want to see some more of these details on projects that weren't included, how much grant funding are we expecting to leverage, et cetera, et cetera.
Councilmember Joe.
Thank you, Council President. Jeff, thanks for all your hard work on this. I'm I remember being on council in 2006 when we passed the first one of these, and it does take 60% of the public to approve them. And the way that we have put them together when Margaret McLeod was with the Parks Department and when Ann McGill was running things is we wanted to make sure that the bond had appeal to a wide audience, a little bit to kids, families with kids, a little bit for people that had kids in the Little League program, a little bit for the trail system. It wasn't a great deal of money that we put aside, but we took a little bit aside every year and squirreled it away. Because we did that, we were able to leverage those monies to get the Calcari property. We were able to leverage that money to get the other pieces of property to preserve our wooded hillsides and to preserve our streams. And when we do that, as many of my council members recall, we're able to come to the table with some money. And when we do that, we're able to say, we are committed to this project. We are putting our own money in that we have saved and had a vision for our future, and we're putting that money on the table. Doing that increased our viability or our rating for that particular application and got us further up in the scale so that we could be eligible for those funds. The projects that we put aside in 2006 and 2013 weren't big, but we put away a little bit of money every year so that we could make that happen. Getting to the point of the park plan, because we started that back in 1999, because we did it in 2006, the park plan that came out that Councilmember Adair mentioned outlines the system that we would like to see and the investments that we would like to see in the future as we go forward. So we've acquired the Calcari property and the other pieces, and as Deputy Council President Jang points out, we're trying to leverage that trail system now by getting amenities near that trail system so that we can make it accessible to as many people as possible. And we want to continue to work on acquiring land around our creek and preserving our forested hillsides. So in general, I think that this plan has been well thought out. It has appealed to different audiences in the group. We heard from our audience commenter who talked about why the trail system was important to him, and he even suggested some additional things that we could consider when we're trying to leverage our funds for funding from King County and the state and other organizations that might come forward. That conversation is important, but getting this piece in place so that in November it can be on the ballot is that first touchstone that makes everything else possible. And so I'm really excited about the program that's here. I'm excited about the pieces that are in there. And I would hope that we would be able to move forward with them so that it reaches a wide audience and as many people as possible and leverages the money that we have in a way that is going to be long-term vision for the future of our community. As we look at this from 2006, 20 years later, here we are, but we started from very, very humble and small beginnings. I want to thank you for all the work that was done, and I'll call Ann McGill tomorrow morning to thank her as well. Thank you.
Tell her I said hi. So I want to try to put some thoughts around what I've heard in the last 20 minutes from the rest of the council. Boy, do we feel passionately about our parks. You know, we talk about traffic and we talk about housing and we talk about a lot of things, but clearly what you've heard tonight is just an amazing passion for our park system and a real desire to have any bond that we move forward with be impactful, right? Tangentially, maybe a little bit, is this conversation around community spaces. I just want to mention, I love the idea of us trying to do force multipliers on our community spaces. I miss meeting at the Issaquah Trail Center, right? For years and years, I loved meeting in that space, and you know, it's just an example of community spaces. But this question about a replacement bond versus what I think of as swinging for the fences, I mean, they're both viable solutions, right? When you go with a replacement bond, what you're saying is historical stewardship, right? You're saying, we've done this before, you've told us that it was important before, and we are going to, we would like to continue doing it, right? We would like to continue putting together things that like we have done in the past, right? And I think that's a viable conversation you can have with the public. I think it's also possible that swinging for the fences is important, right? Just to pick the one that I always love to think of, Confluence Park could be the #1 municipal park in King County. It could be, it could top the lists of municipal parks in this entire county, I believe. And there's a huge investment to get there, right? To integrate and connect to the creeks in the way that it would take, in the way that it wants to be, in the way that we've talked about, would be a large investment, right? But that would be an example of swinging for the fences, right? And there's other things that we could do, finishing, we don't call it the green necklace anymore, but, doing the green necklace, being able to walk from the south end of the city to the lake would be amazing, right? That's a swing for the fences. And I think that the public generally responds to that. And the challenge, I'm not going to critique what we came up with here today, but the passion that you're hearing in the room is because the transportation bond that we floated a few years ago was a camel, right? It was a camel is a horse designed by committee, right? And so we want to not have we don't want to present a camel to the public. And I don't know, you've certainly heard a lot of feedback and about what's fundable and what's not fundable, and I anticipate and look forward to hearing back from you in the future and hearing back from the work of Services and Safety and Parks to address some of these questions. But I think you're hearing, just a love for the park system and a wanting to make sure whether we do a replacement bond or whether we do something that is more swing for the fences, but a love of our park system and wanting to engage with our constituents in a way that everybody's excited about. So that's just my own thinking on it this evening, and I see Deputy Council President wants a second round.
Just a quick question. Would you be able to share this Confluence Park master plan document? Because this is like the first time that I'm hearing about it, and I would love to read more.
Sure, we can get that. I believe it was adopted in probably 2014-ish, 13-ish, somewhere in there, but yeah, we can find it, yeah.
And then deferred ever since.
Well, again, yeah, phase 3 implies moving the shops facility somewhere. But yes, happy to share that. It's very exciting and aspirational.
Other second round of thoughts? I'm not seeing anybody rushing for the mics. I will, of course, ask the question that I always ask, which is, did you get the feedback and the direction that you were looking for from the council this evening?
We sure did. Thank you. Really appreciate and applaud your passion for parks. As a first conversation on this opportunity, I really, really appreciate the feedback, and certainly do not feel offended in the least. All of your feedback is fantastic. So thank you. We will get to work and continue to work with you, Council President, during council leadership and identify if we want to target one of those Services, Safety, and Parks Committee meetings as a next step. But thank you. Very helpful.
All right. Well, with that, we are done with COM 0228, and I will ask if anyone, any council members have anything for the good of the order this evening. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Oops. At 8:33 p.m. Thank you.